Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling. Today we're going to be talking about another championship that I'm very fond of. This is the European Championship, active from 1997 to 2002. Let's start off with some close-ups here, shall we? Now, this is a belt. My brother got it for his 21st birthday back in 2001. Only the leather, it wasn't deluxe, so it wasn't the real leather that you see used on TV, so he ended up selling it and got this one instead, by which point the WWF had become the WWE, so now you see World Wrestling Entertainment, and this was never actually used on television, this particular belt. This is a replica right here. Neither was the Intercontinental Championship. That version, they had variants used on TV, but what I'm holding here was never used on television. I can tell you that much. I love the design so much on this. I can't get over it. Look at all the flags here. Let's see, you got Greece, Germany, Switzerland, Norway, Germany again, Italy, United Kingdom, Italy. I don't know why one of them is an R, Jamaica and Ireland. Spain, Portugal. I forget what this one is, right where my index finger is. Portugal again, and Sweden, and Italy again. So I love all the flags on here, and it's almost the same semicircle shape as the tag team championships were. And then let's look at the back here. Got a green backing. I don't know what happened with the manufacturers, but let me undo this for a second and show you. Something kind of ripped back here, so when you go to put it over your shoulder, you might get a little cut up. So just make sure you're wearing a shirt when you do that. It's just a sticker of authenticity. So let me show it to you forwards now. And this is not for sale, by the way. I don't plan on selling these belts. So, finders keepers. Sorry, guys. So, a little backstory here. The European Championship, what I wanted to get into today was talking about the belt itself. It was a third-tier belt for WWF at the time. It was a stepping stone towards the Intercontinental Championship and beyond, so this was always right beneath the Intercontinental Championship. They were both mid-card titles. Intercontinental title was more for upper mid-carders who were leaning towards the world title picture, for the most part, though not all champions succeeded in that endeavor. But these are people who are lower mid-carders looking for that next step up the rankings, up the superstar ladder, if you will. I just can't think of a better way to describe that, so forgive me. And so, basically, that's what it served. And it was also just to give more people opportunities, have an extra belt for other people to win on the lower card. And this all started in February of 97. There was a tournament held throughout Europe, naturally. And it concluded in Berlin, Germany on the very last Monday Night Raw, because the following week, Monday Night Raw became Raw is War. Excuse me, pardon me. So, the tournament finals included British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith defeating Owen Hart. They were both tag team champions at the time. Monday Night Raw, March 3rd, 1997. It was taped February 26th, so it was a little tape delay. It was in a very dark arena in Berlin, so you really couldn't, wasn't well lit, so you really couldn't see everything, but it was a great match. It wasn't a great card, whatever else was on Raw that night at the time, but a great main event, and it showcased the natural talents of both members of the Hart family, of both brother-in-laws. So Bulldog won. He was a good fit to be the first ever European champion. And he carried it well, though I think this belt might have taken a back seat to the tag titles, because he and Owen were feuding tag partners before Brett brought them back together and they reformed the Hart Foundation. I think this belt originally was supposed to only be defended in Europe, but obviously that was not the case. Pardon me, because it would be defended anywhere in the world. The United States, Canada, Mexico, Japan, you name it. So yeah, it was mostly for Europe. So then we had some other great champions along the way. Shawn Michaels was the one that beat the Bulldog for the belt. This was in Manchester, England, September the 20th of 1997 at One Night Only. One Night Only because I guess WWF didn't really have a lot of pay-per-views overseas, and I think they were trying to expand in that market, and they hadn't quite gone through with the expansion yet, so they didn't know how many more times they'd be back to do a pay-per-view. Granted, they've done live events overseas and continue to do it to this day, but it wasn't always broadcast on a pay-per-view basis, let alone on free television. So that's why they called it One Night Only, because they didn't know the next year they'd have Capital Carnage, and then down the road Rebellion and Insurrection, and we can go on and on. But I'll stop right there. So the main event was for the European title. Bulldog defended and lost the belt to Shawn Michaels, and Shawn, being the complete asshole he was backstage in those days, begged and pleaded with Vince McMahon to change the outcome of the match, because Bulldog was the hometown hero, walking in as champion, was going to retain it that night. But Shawn changed the plan otherwise. He had enough stroke, being the leader of the Clique, was able to make these decisions. And at the time, it was just him and Hunter. They just started D-Generation X, and the two of them convinced Vince, it'd be a good ending to generate some heat. Boy, heat is not a big enough word to describe this. So Bulldog was in peril throughout that match. Shawn was working on his knee, which he had a brace on, so he had an injured knee going into it, I think. I haven't seen the match in a very long time, so I do need to rewatch it. But I do remember that eventually, I think it got to a point where Bulldog's wife, Diana, who's Brett Owen's sister and Harry Smith's mother, Harry is Davey Boy's son, Diana came in the ring, and Shawn threw the knee brace at her, as an insult, and then she threw it back in. Similarly, very akin to throwing in the towel. A lot of parallels there. It was like the proverbial towel she threw in, so Shawn would spare her husband his injured knee there that he was working on in the ring. And so the ref decided, okay, the match is over, Shawn wins, and we have a new champion. People were throwing garbage in the ring like crazy. Soda bottles, water bottles, plastic food containers, you name it. Other types of trash and debris. It was just shredding the ring. I don't think they can get away with that so much anymore. You can actually hurt somebody doing that, as you know. But, the crowd in Manchester, England was none too pleased with the outcome, and why would they be? So Shawn holds the belt, and it again becomes secondary because he's also a co-holder of another. He's a holder of another belt, not a co-holder, just a holder. And then he won the WWF title and the Montreal Screwjob from Brett. Not going to talk about that because it's already been well documented. Then he'd actually dropped the belt to Hunter in December of '97 on an episode of Raw. I think it was from Lowell, Massachusetts, because the arena inside Lowell, Massachusetts is very similar to the Manhattan Center in New York City. So it's easy to get those two venues mixed up, but it has the same kind of theater setting, if you will. So basically the Hunter-Shawn match, Hunter runs across the ring and Shawn lies down and eventually pins him, and Shawn feigns crying and being upset that he lost the belt. Oh, I can't believe I lost it. Oh. But he's really happy for his best friend. It was just a cheap, easy victory. Shawn didn't really need the European title once he became a 3-time WWF champion. He already got the big belt there. Not the big gold belt, that's WCW, but he's already got the world title, so... Sorry, something on my screen. He's already got the world title, so what does he have to be sorry for? What does he have to be sorry about? So other champions I enjoyed. Triple H was actually a good champion. He and Owen had a good feud. Owen got a brief reign out of it. Eventually he turned face because DX was starting to get over with the fans more and more post Shawn Michaels. D'Lo Brown then took the title. He was the first real interesting champion we had because, while not a European himself, he's from Chicago, Illinois, he took the belt and pretended to travel around the world. So I don't think they showed any vignettes, but I remember some photos in like WWF Magazine. He'd be holding the belt like this, and he'd have like a bowler's hat on, and he'd be pointing to a map of Europe. I'll pretend there's a map of Europe behind me. I'm the champion of France. I'm the champion of Italy. I'm the champion of the UK. I'm the champion of the Netherlands, whatever, Belgium. He picked all these places, and the ring announcer would announce him, now unhailing from Brussels, Belgium, or something like that, each and every week that he was champion. Till X-Pac beat him for the belt, and then they played hot potato with it for a while. X-Pac was an okay champion, good champion, but nothing spectacular out of that reign. Shane McMahon got the belt by hook or by crook when he defeated X-Pac in a tag match on Raw. It was right after St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It was X-Pac and Triple H, I believe, versus Kane and Shane McMahon. Yeah, kind of a weird dynamic there. And whoever scores the pinfall becomes European champion. So they used to put singles belts in tag belts or six-man bouts. All right, title bouts in six-man or tag bouts, which is a very big tongue twister, I might add. So Shane wins with help from China and Kane, the rest of the corporation. And at the time, they actually had a redesign. I'll show you. just by pointing out this belt here. The European title still had the block WWF logo on it, and it was a little darker here. See how this is all in white? The font was actually camouflaged with this gold color. Now on the back here, there's some symbols. There's like a WWF authenticity symbol. I don't think my Intercontinental title had one, but the European title doesn't. So the version that Shane McMahon held, X-Pac and Shane McMahon held, it was a dark green, much darker than the green you see here. Just like we had a dark purple for the Intercontinental title. The World title, WWF title, was dark blue. They used to put colors on the belts, which I didn't mind at the time. I liked it, actually. This was a dark green, and here it had the New Generation logo, and it said WWF European Champion. They could fit it on 2 lines. And I thought that was just a nice touch there. I love the way these belt designs look. I don't like too many belt designs in today's WWE, but that's another story for another day. But Attitude Era and before that, Ruthless Aggression Era, they did a great job with their belt designs. So kudos to the belt makers there, whoever you are. So Shane decided, at WrestleMania 15, Shane defeated X-Pac to retain his title, and then I think it was the night after on Raw, or the week after on Raw, he decided to retire as an unbeaten champion. And retire, I put in quotes, because he didn't actually retire. Shane was, 29 years old back in 99, much too young to retire from wrestling. Unless, of course, he's moving on to another career, but that obviously didn't happen. So this was persona non grata, this European title. We didn't see it until about mid-June of 99. Midian, corporate ministry member, by then the corporation had merged with the Ministry of Darkness, we had the corporate ministry. Midian found this belt in Shane McMahon's bag and pretended that he needed it to hold his pants up. And then he bugged Shane, he pestered Shane about it, and Shane had bigger problems to deal with, like Stone Cold, for instance. So he's like, Shane, can I be champion now? Yeah, fine, take it, whatever. Jesus Christ, leave me alone. So Shane was more than happy to get rid of it and give somebody else the belt, let alone a member of his own faction, the corporate ministry. And Midian didn't have to work hard for it at all. He was just handed the belt, much like Mark Henry was. I think in August of 99, Jeff Jarrett helped him. So, yeah, it's some lesser-known champions. It wasn't until Kurt Angle won the European title, and then he was dual champion, Eurocontinental champion. Jeff Jarrett was the first, but Jeff quickly got rid of this belt and gave it to Mark Henry. But Kurt was the first real... No, actually, D'Lo Brown was the first Eurocontinental champion. We've had 3 of them, I think. First was D'Lo, because he was IC champion with this belt, and then Jeff won it and then gave it to Mark Henry, so he was only Eurocontinental champion for 1 night. Kurt Angle was a Eurocontinental champion for a good length of time, at least a good 6 weeks, leading up to WrestleMania 2000. So he beat Val Venus on SmackDown, lost this to Chris Jericho in that epic 2 out of 3 falls Intercontinental European title match at WrestleMania 2000. Jericho also held this for less than 24 hours, and he dropped it to Eddie Guerrero. Eddie started the whole Mamacita angle with Chyna. Chyna was disgusted by Eddie Guerrero upon his arrival to the company, and then she was helping Chris Jericho. They had a sort of a respect feud left over from when both were Intercontinental champion, and Chris had since lost the IC title to Kurt Angle at that point in time. So she backstabbed and betrayed Chris Jericho, Chyna did, so that Eddie could become European champion. And they were always driving around the lowrider, and they went to the prom together after Eddie passed his GED. That was a little storyline angle going on in the spring of 2000. Chyna always carried a bouquet of roses, which had a metal bar inserted inside, so that way she could use it as a weapon. Or Eddie probably used it more so than her, and he knocked the guy out only to find out, oh, this is more than just a bed of roses here, a bouquet. It's an actual lead pipe inside there. Oh my God. That was clever, actually. I haven't seen it done since then. That was 25 years ago. Who else? One of my probably my favorite European champion, and this is now the lower mid-card we're talking about, lower card people, would have to be Al Snow. This is the fall of 2000. Creatively, the product wasn't so great. Chris Kresge stepped down as the head writer, and Stephanie McMahon took over. And go back and watch the fall of 2000. You'll see it kind of goes into the product goes into a steep decline. Not a steep decline, but a little decline creatively. It's so not the best time, but still better than, what came years later. So Al Snow won this belt on SmackDown late August of 2000. Won it from Perry Saturn, a forgettable champion. And he did the same thing as D'Lo Brown, but took it a step further. Hailing from all different parts of Europe, including Transylvania. He actually dressed up as Dracula, a vampire, And he always came out with different theme songs every week, as long as he was defending the European title. And not only did he have a theme song, but he came out in a different costume every week. So he's from Italy. He'd have on he'd pretend he was a pizza chef or something like that. France, he had on his beret and his striped shirt. He even did Japan. He even acted like he was from Japan. As we know, Japan's not in Europe. So he had on a gi or something. I don't know. Transylvania, did the Dracula bit. The last time, and his reign lasted all of 48 days. Even at Unforgiven 2000, Al Snow was in the 10-minute hardcore championship battle royal. As European champion, he came out to the ring in one of his European get-ups, probably from Germany or something. So it was Oktoberfest. He came out with beer and pretzels and sausages or whatever. Oh my God, it was hilarious. Well, not culturally accurate with all the gimmicks, but, he was just kind of playing up to the stereotypes here. So it wasn't like he was trying to outright insult the people of Europe. So this all came to a screeching halt in October of 2000 when Al lost the belt to William Regal. And on that night, Al pretended he was from the UK and brought out this hilarious picture of William Regal looking scared shitless. But it wasn't enough to give Al the win and retain his belt. So William Regal then took the belt because he actually had Regal had just jumped ship from WCW to WWF, and he was offended that Al Snow would represent Europe in such a way. So he took the belt from him, and he carried it with class and dignity, and he's a 4-time champ, much like D'Lo Brown. Together they have the most reigns of European champions, 4 apiece. So after Regal, you had a great champion. I'm going to do this one for my buddy, Matt Hardy. He won it in April. Won in April of 2001 and lost it in August 2001, so 126 days for Matt Hardy. Funny story here, which I believe to be true because I read it somewhere a long time ago. So don't ask me my sources. I just read it on the internet somewhere a long time ago. And I believe it to be true just because knowing what we know about Matt Hardy now, how he always seemed to be kind of in the shadow of his younger brother, Jeff. Jeff had just won the Intercontinental title from Triple H, only to lose it back like 6 days later. This is April of 2001. Matt followed suit, and there was some story backstage that Matt threatened to quit WWF if he wasn't given an opportunity with a singles belt. If you don't believe me, go look it up, and perhaps I could be wrong on this one, but I'm going to maintain my story until somebody proves me wrong otherwise. He threatened to quit, and management gave him the European title as a way to keep him around. But where the hell was he going to go? ECW had closed its doors. WCW went out of business. He was going to probably flounder on the indies for all we know and maybe do something there. So he won the belt. Eddie was actually supposed to have a title defense that weekend against Raven at Backlash, and so they turned that match into a triple threat. Eddie invoking his rematch clause against Matt, and Christian is added to the mix. So Matt Hardy successfully defends his belt against Christian and Eddie Guerrero. It was one of the weirdest triple threat matches because you had kind of the lesser-known members of ENC and the Hardys there. Might as well add Devon Dudley to that mix because I think Bubba, Ray Dudley, Edge, and Jeff Hardy are like the more popular members, the Shawn Michaels of their teams, while the others seemed to be kind of Marty Jannetty's. And don't take this the wrong way, they were better than Marty Jannetty, but didn't get as much popularity as the 3 aforementioned ones. So, speaking of Christian, he's another European champion that's been forgotten about. He won the belt from Bradshaw in a non-televised match on SmackDown. It was one of those rare occasions where at a SmackDown taping, I think they might have had too many matches, and this is Christian we're on. We're done with Matt Hardy. And they didn't have enough time to showcase every single match. And this was during the Invasion. You had 11 championships to be contended for. And this belt, people didn't give a shit about it too much because there were other belts that were more important to be contended for. So Christian defeats Bradshaw in this non-televised match. And they showed just a clip of Christian walking out with excitement like this. They showed a clip on WWF Excess that following Saturday. It was a talk show hosted by the Coach and Trish Stratus. And that's where they gave away the result, because they knew nobody would see it unless they were reading the Wrestling Observer and getting the SmackDown spoilers, which many of us did back then. So Christian holds on to it, and he claims to be the best champion from Europe, and he insults a lot of Northeastern fans, because it was around that time the World Series happened, where the Arizona Diamondbacks beat the New York Yankees, and a lot of Yankee fans were pissed off. As I'm a Northeasterner, I could relate to that. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I knew people who were, so you can imagine how they felt. And then he says, "I'm now residing in Tampa, Florida," to insult his Canadian fans, versus hailing from Toronto, which he originally been from, which he's from originally. And then DDP beats him for the belt after 91 days, and DDP was probably the oldest champion. He was like 48 at the time, maybe a little younger, but still not at his prime. Then one of the last great European champions he had was Jeff Hardy. Well, he only held it for 2 weeks. Maybe I shouldn't be saying great, but he did have that great ladder match where he unified the belt with Rob Van Dam's Intercontinental Championship. But Rob Van Dam was the winner. And I believe that's RVD's sole reign with the European title, though it doesn't count for much because it was about to be abandoned then. And the abandonment came about when Eric Bischoff was announced as the new Raw General Manager in July of 2002. Eric really only wanted one world title. This is in kayfabe we're talking about. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I was only 13, so I wasn't really following much behind the scenes stuff, so I read about this stuff much later. Eric only wanted one world title. The World Heavyweight title, the tag titles, and the women's title. He didn't even want the Intercontinental title around, and that's another story which I'm not going to get into now. So the European title was the first to go, and then the Hardcore title followed suit. So it was a ladder match. Jeff Hardy as European champion defending against Rob Van Dam, and I believe just the Intercontinental title was hoisted high above the ring. So the European title never was really in a ladder match except for that last night, but it was more so for the Intercontinental Championship than it was for the European Championship. RVD won it, though I don't know if the reign is officially recognized, but he'd make a fine damn good champion. RVD. Just had to get that in there. And that, my friends, is where we close the book on the European Championship. So a great belt in the sense that it gave other guys that weren't doing anything on the roster something to do and something to win and look forward to winning. So I wish we had we have so many belts now, but they're all brand specific. So if we didn't have this whole brand business going on, then maybe the European title would fit in somehow, but I just don't see it coming back anytime soon. We have enough belts as it is, even ones that I don't think are necessary, like that Speed Championship. I don't even have a Twitter account. And or X now. Fuck it, it's X. That stupid Speed Championship, win the belt 5 minutes or less. I don't think it's doing any favors for anybody, so that belt can go away for all I care. I'm glad they got rid of the 24/7 title, because that had certainly lost steam. Anyways, this has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.